Hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in again. And I am going to review the book Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. Okay. And this is the cover of the book. Very interesting cover. Okay, so this is the extra book of the month of July, and it was suggested by Reading with Tara. So shout out to Miss Tara for this book selection. Um, this story has a lot of moving parts, and you will definitely need to pay attention in order to keep up. Okay, I started off listening to the audiobook version and I had some difficulty, okay? So remember, I've always said that narrators can make or break a book. Well, this is an example of the latter happening, okay? I had a what is going on feeling like I was lost from jump listening to the audiobook. And so I was like, why is the narrator reading like that? Like, I was just thrown off. I was thrown off by how the narrator was reading the book. I was like, something ain't right. And then I also thought, what does Tara have me reading? Like, what is this? So I stopped listening to the audiobook version and decided to just get the physical copy. And I'm glad that I did, okay? However, when I cracked open the book, I had like, oh Lord, that's why the narrator was reading it like that. This book was not written in the traditional conventional way with clear paragraphs and punctuation and I'm gonna put it this way. I was surprised. I was surprised at how this was written. I don't think I have ever read a professional edited book that looked like this. Okay. Um, it did not have the traditional paragraph format. It did not have the traditional, the sentence starts with a capital letter and ends with a punctuation. So, if you are a stickler for those grammatical things, this book will definitely irritate or trigger you. However, I was able to read it as if it was done in the traditional conventional way, and I enjoyed it, but it does throw you off, okay? Forewarning. um this story has woven the lives of several people, okay? There is Anna, Dominique, Nzinga. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Yaz, Carol, Boomy, Letitia, Shirley, Winsome, Penelope, Megan, Hattie, and Grace, among other intertwined people. Okay, so that in itself is a lot to kind of keep up with. Okay, and it's a little bit to keep up with on how they're connected. But I'm gonna help you out. Okay, I'm gonna help you out a little bit. So these people are the main highlighted persons that you will go on a journey with. All of them are either related or connected acquaintances that provide a common thread of perseverance, endurance, tenacity, and finding purpose, among other things. I will tell you, a little bit about each of the characters without giving too much away. The first is Amma. It's not Anna, it's Amma. Sorry. Amma is a free spirit, non-committal in her intimate relationships. Amma is a director that has taken risks with the content of her craft. Okay? She is the mother of Yaz, and Yaz is attending university with the intent on being a journalist. She has an educational plan mapped out for herself and is very vocal and independent. Amma and Roland are her unconventional parents. Then there's Dominique, an actor that definitely played the system in her time of need to gain housing. She is more committed in her relationships and found herself staying longer than she should have in an abusive relationship with Nzinga. Dominique's life was turned upside down by this relationship. Now, Nzinga, and I know I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, sorry, grew up, obtained an education, and established a life for herself. She endured domestic violence, sexual abuse, and drug usage environments. And she became an abuser herself. But she didn't view her actions as such. Nzinga has extreme views. She's possessive, controlling, hypervigilant, and has paranoid behaviors. Carol is a mathematical person and doing good academically. However, after an incident in, I think it was high school, she declined and kind of withdrew into herself. And then after a time, Carol was able to regain her footing and began an upward momentum in her life. She worked hard to get into university, where she was exposed and introduced to another side of life which made her more polished and well-rounded. She worked her way up the banking industry. Then there's Boomy. Boomy is Carol's mother, who had a rough childhood but obtained an education and mathematical degree that was pretty much reduced to nothing when she moved to London. Boomy and her husband had accomplished obtaining degrees in their respective fields, but once in London, those degrees didn't mean much, and they were not able to get the higher paying jobs or jobs in the field they got an education for. After years of lower paying jobs and her husband's death, Boomy put her education to use and started a business. Letitia didn't apply herself during her younger years and became a mother of 3 and was working at a grocery store. Letitia worked her way up the ranks and became the store manager. Letitia came to a point in her life where she decided she wanted better for herself and her family and went back to school. Shirley is a teacher at a high school where she began with the grandeur ideas of how her career would go. She was bright-eyed and eager to teach and cultivate great minds. She wanted to change lives through the power of education. However, the students, co-workers, and school bureaucracy had other plans. Shirley gives the teacher's perspective of school life that we usually don't hear of until recent years, when teachers have become more vocal about the behind-the-scenes shenanigans and hardships. Winsome is Shirley's mom. Winsome retired from being a bus ticket taker and security person. She entered the next phase of her life and became a book club member. Once also put some spice in her life by having an affair. Yeah, you got to read that part because that was just like, you say, what? How could she? Penelope, at age 16, found out in the most uncomforting of ways that she was adopted. She went on to become a teacher and worked her way to academic head of school. Penelope has gone through two husbands and has now decided her home is too big for her and rents parts of it out. Megan had an issue with all things feminine as a young child. She didn't want to wear the dresses and play with dolls like her mother insisted on. Megan changed her appearance as a teen, dropped out of school, and began to use drugs. She went through a sex, drugs, and partying phase of her life, but eventually got it together. Megan was on a self-exploration and identity-defining journey. Megan posed questions that many of us are too afraid to ask due to the very reaction she received when asking. I will say that if a person asks questions coming from a place of trying to understand a thing, being berated for not being knowledgeable is not the way to go. Not everyone's explanation of a thing is the same, especially on this topic. So when people are asking and coming from a place of trying to understand, just give them some grace. We obviously don't know. And we obviously are trying to figure out the most politically correct way to address things or see things, but we're not in your shoes, so we don't know. So I will let you read the book to find out what that conversation and topic is all about. That was just my little 2 cents I threw in about it. So you'll have to read the book to find out that conversation and how it goes. Now, Grace grew up in a youth facility after her mother died. Grace was taken in and taught how to be a civilized woman with many talents. Grace was courted and then married to a wonderful, doting husband. She had difficulty with pregnancy and had a miscarriage, and then she had a child that lived for a little while but then died at a very young age. Grace finally had a child that lived past the age of 3. I mean, this child actually grew up into adulthood. But for the first 3 years of this child's life, Grace was kind of withdrawn from life and the child. During that 3-year time span, Grace was not connected to the child. She kind of withdrew and didn't bond or really care for the child. I think they're just my personal perspective. I think she had a fear of loving this child and then the child not living. And so that created some complications in her relationship. But eventually she did come around and they lived a good life. Now, Hattie is the elderly grandmother of Morgan and the daughter of Grace. Hattie owns a farm and tells her perspective of her family members, which is kind of funny. Hattie gives the history of herself and family, and she has a secret that eventually comes out decades later. And you will have to read the book to find out what that is, okay? The stories of these people are much more than what I've given in this short synopsis, okay? You have to read the book to get more details about their journeys and connections and how all of these people intertwine into this great story. There was a passage in the book that kind of spoke to me, and it said, "It is a privilege not to die prematurely." And that kind of spoke to me because nowadays it's a blessing to live a long life. It really is. We see way too many people passing before they've had a chance to really live a good long life. And so that passage kind of spoke to me a little bit. The lives of these characters spoke of hardships, obstacles, triumphs, self-discovery, and most importantly, the longevity of life. And that if you live long enough, you will have to encounter and endure. Another thought while reading this book was there is a little part in here where somebody was snooping, okay? So snooping in your parents' or kids' bedrooms may show you more than what you want to know about them. I mean, what would you do once you've learned certain details about either your parents or your kids or whomever you went snooping? And maybe you didn't intentionally snoop, maybe you just stumbled upon it. But either way, you found out information about a person that they probably might not want you to know. Well, there was a little bit of that described in this story. So that was just like oh yeah. I've actually had some moments like that. Some good, some not so good. But at either rate, yeah, finding things out about people that they probably would prefer you not know is interesting. And how would you handle that? Would you say anything? Would you just keep quiet? What would you do? There was a couple of phrases that I found funny in this book. I think it was pretty much written with the characters living in like London and over the waters. It was written over the waters in London and surrounding areas. So some of their wording was a little funny to me. And one was wacky backy. Now, I guessed what that meant. I'm pretty sure you'll figure out what that means, but I thought, yeah, okay, wacky backy. And then another wording that I was like, what? Where did they get that from? It was multicultural whoredom. I was like, whoa, that's a new one for me. But I'll let you read the book to find out what those things mean and the context in which they were used. And then I also thought while reading this book, there is some commentary about this family's history and where they came from. And I thought that children can be ashamed of their race and distance themselves from their parents because it would further prove the level of blackness they were. And now this was kind of back in that time frame era of passing as another race was happening. So that's kind of where that thought came from when reading the book. There are some triggers I will advise you of. The book has an abundance of LGBTQ plus content. So if you have an issue with that, don't even pick the book up. Okay? Because it's all up and through there. So if you got an issue with it, just pass. Okay? There is sexual abuse, assault, and drug usage described. There is domestic violence and child death. there could also be a trigger of the affair that occurred. Um, and just some of the ideas and comments that are made in the book could be of issue to someone. There aren't any discussion questions, and I wish there had been. I think maybe if we got the author's discussion questions, we could, better understand what they may have wanted us to get out of this book without, kind of guessing on our own. But there are so many topics you can cover by reading this book, okay? There is the topic of self-discovery and understanding what that may look like for a person trying to understand why they feel the way they do about their sexuality. The topic of adoption and how it affects all parties involved. The education system and its difficulties as well as its successes. The topic of life decisions and the ripple effect it can cause. The topic of turning your life around for the better and how hard that can be. Reasons one may stray in a relationship and how they try to rationalize that. The topic of co-parenting, pros and cons. The topic of race identification. And knowing where you come from and what your genetic race makeup is, and if those answers affect your life one way or another. Obviously, the topic of domestic violence, the topic of residual effects from sexual assault. Those are just a few to get you started, but I am sure you can come up with many more, and probably some that are a little bit more deeper. So thank you, Reading with Tar, for this great read. I was entertained, it was insightful, it was thought-provoking. I didn't go deep with this review, but if one chooses to dive in and dig deeper with the discussion, this book does provide content for that. The book was moderate pace. This is not what I would consider a quick weekend read. I suggest taking your time and enjoying the characters and their journey. As I said before, it is not written in the traditional conventional way, so you may or may not have difficulty with that. It would seem kind of like this book is written on par for the bold, rule-breaking, stereotype, thrashing characters. And I mean, the way that the book was written, I mean, it was breaking some rules. It was bold, and it was definitely thrashing some stereotypes of how a book must be written. So again, thank you, Reading with Tara, for this book suggestion. I gave this book a 9.5 out of 10. If you've read the book, comment your thoughts. I would like to know what you think about this book. If you haven't read it, pick it up and be enlightened, okay? So, it is now time to pick the August extra read. Now, if you didn't know, you can suggest a book for review. That book suggestion will go into this handy dandy vase. Every month, there will be a drawing for the extra book review. And you will get a shout out during your review selection, just like Reading with Tara has for this review. And I would really love your participation in giving a book selection. It definitely helps broaden my reading horizons, okay? You guys have been having me read some stuff I'm not so sure I would have picked up if it had been left to me, okay? But even though I have said that, so far the suggestions have been awesome. So, who shall the August book selection be? Let's see. And I'm going to look away so it'll be a little fair. Ouch. This time my hand is getting stuck. Okay, so the month of August. Let's see. Who is this? Ho, 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 ho! Dr. Leva Chancellor. And the book is called Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I know I just botched that author's name. I do apologize. But it's Children of Blood and Bone. Now, you know what? I think I have seen this. I haven't read it. I have not read it. I think I've had intentions on reading it a couple of times and just didn't follow through with reading it. I will say, if this is the book that I think it is, the cover is kind of intriguing. So that will be the book for August. Yay! So, there we have it. Don't forget to subscribe, click like, and or share this video. I greatly appreciate all the views, all the likes, all the comments. I am truly enjoying this journey with you guys. And so until next time, keep turning the pages, my book lovers.